Their guidance. They got good guidance from Judge Fredrickson.
That's the point I want to say.
Yeah.
You got advice from Judge Fredrickson saying it was unconstitutional. And they went through all this rigmarole of going back to the council, getting an ordinance passed, trying to bypass the judge, rushing it up to the Supreme Court. And then remember, the judge came out again and said, listen, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Don't try pulling that trick on me. So they rush it up, hand carry it up to the appeals court on a Friday, and by Friday afternoon they got this decision. Mm-hmm. So don't tell me, whoever this spokesman is, that you hadn't already had some pretty darn good advice that what you were doing was unconstitutional.
Exactly.
You went.
Well, you know where you are. You're back at Talkin' Racine. And so are we. Mr. George Myers.
Good morning to you.
And Jim.
Morning.
Spodek.
Yes.
Ken. Jorgen. And we're going to talk about, first, right off the bat, we're going to talk about the Racine City Attorney. This is Scott Latenti. I think it's Letney, isn't it?
It's Letney, yeah.
It might be mud one of these days.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah. Well, a request to put in to the city of Racine for a bunch of records, and they weren't being forthcoming with it. It was like, how many weeks? It was like 6 weeks or so.
Well,
the kind of the norm by statutes is they sort of expect municipalities to comply with this public records request in about 10 days.
Yeah.
But then nothing happened until this attorney got involved, and he wrote a letter to Mr. Letney. Would you like to read that letter? Or?
Well, it just said, actually, he came to Hot Government, and George, you're part of that, and said he wanted to represent Hot Government on these records requests. And he not only representing this Hot Government, it was Janelle Branchen, who's a assembly person out of, I believe, Menominee Falls, who had asked for records out of Racine, and the Wisconsin Voter Alliance out of, I think, Kewanee, Wisconsin, was also asking for records in Racine. So he asked to represent all of them, I might add free of charge, and sent the letter to Scott Letney, and basically I'm writing behalf of this to the city of Racine, and asking for these records based on a written is unclear whether to containing. Basically, he's asking the city of Racine kick up these records. You've had them almost 4 months. Some of these requests have been in.
And the people that I'm representing they're starting to think about suing the city.
Right. He actually put in an email that considering going to circuit court.
Yeah.
And Letney responds.
But
shockingly.
That's where he responded with, that was his excuse. He's like, well, we sent a letter back to Mr. Harry Wade, who requested this one batch of records.
Right.
And it was like, normally 10 days they respond by giving you the documents. That just blew right by. And then at the 6-week point, then he says, well, you're asking for an awful lot. And then it just dropped for another couple of 3 months before the attorney wrote him a letter and
what
said,
they were doing was stalling it. It was a stall job.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
it was. I mean, that's Racine does that. They do it over and over. But if you remember back to a couple episodes back, we had Eric Cardell on. We had ran into him. I was in Madison, and George, you were there, and we interviewed him there. And then he actually was on some national blogging station, thing.
Oh, he was on the War Room, right?
War Room, yeah.
The point is that Wisconsin, although a pretty liberal state in many regards, has very tight voting laws about early voting and mail-in ballots. We've had the commission with Knutson and people looking at it. How is it you guys are finding this out now? Why we're not a Republicans? It's a Republican-controlled legislature, but Democratically controlled executive branch. Why is this just coming up now, and why is this such a shocking surprise to people?
The government is basically the problem that needs to be solved. The government doesn't represent the people anymore, so the people have to declare, leaders declare that they're the leaders, in a populist moment. Now, the Wisconsin 5 mayors are personally accountable. They signed off on this Wisconsin state voting plan with these 20-plus provisions that specifically say we're going to increase turnout in our cities, we're going to do it this way. We're going to give these preferred services to give access to the in-person voting and absentee voting, and the rest of Wisconsin was left behind.
I mean, he carries a national presence, and he came to Racine to ask for these emails, and I mean, Letney rolled over like a puppy dog.
Well, here's the thing. Wisconsin's coming up more and more on the national scene because of all these audits going on, and they're looking at coming to Racine. And this guy is coming from a national basis. Now, I think Letney probably doesn't want, he's heard enough about Wisconsin, probably, and when Racine has come up, even, I don't think he wants to hear the name Corey Mason come up on the national scene. See, so he's probably saying, and then right along.
Not in this particular light, anyway.
Yeah, it might be his name too, right along with it.
Yeah, I think what's happened here is that it all of a sudden it's like we can't get enough records to you. Matter of fact, I think some of the records are already showing up.
Yeah,
but it couldn't be more. It could be more accommodating.
It couldn't be more obvious too what's going on.
So I think what he's doing is saying to hell with covering Mason and the clerk and the other staff members. I
got my pension to think about.
Right, I'm going for high ground. Exactly. And I think that's part of it. When you look at the pressure comes on to a little city like Racine, who really is the linchpin in Wisconsin of distributing that Zuckerberg money. You're going to get some major attention at some point. I mean, it's happening all over the country. I mean, it's only a matter of time before it shows up in Wisconsin. And Corey Mason and their staff is really...
all they're discovering in there in Arizona, it's one thing to do a recount. It's another when you go and do a forensic recount where you're actually looking at ballots and see where they really folded. How does a mail-in ballot come in with no folds in it?
Right. Or where's the money going? And in his Zuckerberg thing, was all that money used for really COVID relief? One of the things that I did find was that the Safe at Home CTCL contract was signed not only by Corey Mason and Tara Coolidge, but also Scott Letney. So, I mean, they're all on the hook for this, and this is a contract. Now, we went through that on the other show. I mean, is it a contract? I mean, to be a contract that was okayed in Racine, that was able to be sectioned out to Green Bay and Madison and Milwaukee? I mean, is that really legal? I mean, I think some of this stuff's going to be really challenged. And I think Letney's seeing it. And he's saying, ho, I'm a good guy. I'm going to give you everything you need.
Yeah, now. Yeah.
Right.
So this is July, and the first request was March 17th, you said?
Yeah, March 17th.
March.
Or March 15th. There was one
April,
at March
May,
15th.
June, July. That's 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months. And
That's
in the
a long
email,
10 days.
Long 10 days.
Yeah, in the email, I mean, within 2 weeks, he's going to have all this stuff, not only to hot government, but to the Representative Branchin and to the Voter Alliance, all three of them. Now, there may even be more, but those three are represented by Eric Cardell. And all of a sudden, it's just, like, magical.
I wonder if any of these records are going to show up with redactions, with all those black lines all over everything.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think we'll be able to get access to it. And it's public record. We should be able to get access.
Mm-hmm.
But it brings up another point. You get something like this. Oh, one last thing. He also, and George, you should probably tell us, is that the Supreme Court, he is going to write a brief on behalf of Wisconsin Voter Alliance on the RSUD Supreme Court review that you're involved with.
That's cool, but fortunately I don't know. That's great news. I mean, that's right. He wanted to put in the amicus brief, amicus brief.
Amicus.
All right. Lawyers call it amicus. The rest of us call it amicus.
I've even heard it amicus. I don't know what the hell it is.
But yes, which will be very interesting because our case centers down to one little clause in the law that says that voters have a right to look at the votes, at the ballots, when they're challenging it, and the opposition, our opposition, Racine Unified School District wants to say that voters have a right to look at it as long as the judge lets them, and so he's going to have an interesting argument there because that's the only argument. I've looked at the statute; it's very clear, but the way it gets interpreted could be something else. So it'd be nice to have this briefing because that's all we really want to do is look at certain ballots and certain in certain wards, we don't want to do a complete recount of the recount. And we've already done almost a forensic audit when we were looking at ballots up on screens and this type of stuff, and looking at signatures and dates and making sure that they were properly cast. So we did more than just a recount during that recount.
Right.
We were also looking and seeing, were there valid ballots that were rejected, or were there bad ballots that were accepted?
So
The
you
problem
guys
was the math just didn't add up.
Well, yeah, and then you
So,
got into that.
yeah.
So the point is we don't want to go through that again. No, it's not all that again. All we want is look at certain ballots. How do you subtract a ballot from this stack, and then you recount and find that there's one less in that stack, and this stayed the same.
But your argument to the Supreme Court is framed in the way that citizens have a right to look at the ballots.
do that. Yeah,
You have a right to look at those ballots.
That's right.
A
That's what the
recount,
statute says,
a
and
regular
that's what we
count,
want,
whatever,
right.
and that's really the argument. And Cardell and his firm is going to back you up.
Put an amicus
Yeah.
brief in. That's,
Yeah,
a
and
friend,
that's
that's a
great.
friend of the court. They're
Yeah.
going to make a
So we'll
they're
see
not
where all
involved
that-
with it,
yeah.
but they have an opinion, and they think
Absolutely.
we should.
And I think it's a good one. I think it fits actually
And it comes
very well.
from somebody that Letney even listens to.
Yeah. But, one of the things I brought up with you guys earlier was, like, how does this open records with, we're talking thousands of emails, apparently, is what they're saying. How does that relate to the Sandy Widener case,
Yeah.
which is going on 5 years on, I can't hardly believe that we can talk about this case and Letney can just roll over on this and pump out all the emails because it's his hide more than likely on the out there. And of course, back when it was Sandy Widener, well, we're just, I think that was
We got to seal these records.
we got to seal it, and she can't see anything, and the
And I'll see
citizens can't
pictures
see.
of emails that
Yeah.
everybody and their brother has.
So how
known.
is this going to play out? You got one side here, you got thousands of emails that are going to be distributed because national focus is on it, and now you got Sandy Widener, who has fought it really by herself, her finances, to say, hey, this is wrong what you're doing. But yet she's still in court, and I believe she's still under a contempt of court order.
Well, and when you look at the quantity and the content of the emails that are in dispute in the Sandy Widener case, as compared to the emails that are going to be coming out that have probably some of them already come out in this case, are you really trying to claim that those emails in the Widener case are of greater consequence than these?
Exactly.
That is the most absurd claim. Absolutely nuts.
So how does this? I guess and again we go back to the two judges. You got Gasker Gevich, and then you got Kirkman and Kenosha. Basically, just as far as I'm concerned, almost criminal the way they handle that case. Never looked at it. I think Kirkman's order actually never had any kind of basis of law when he said it has to be continued to be sealed. There were no law there. That was basically, we're going to just do what the attorneys want.
Yeah,
But wasn't it you that said that he was, or was it you, he was reflecting on a case that he had, a practice case, while he was in law school?
Right.
Had some similarity to it?
That was his precedent.
Yeah.
A pretend case, a practice case that did in law school. That was a precedent, and it was similar to this one. So he went according to what they decided in law school.
So, but then you look at this. So what a difference here, huh? Because if you really go back to, and I don't want to move on, but if you go back to these Arizona and Georgia and Michigan, they're saying, hey, nothing happened. We're not going to give up this information. You want the routers and you want all this stuff. We don't have it. We're not going to give it to you. They really put up a wall of defense to protect whoever was involved with the election. Racine, all of a sudden, one guy comes in with a fairly nationally known law firm, and Letney's like, "Hey, I'm not defending anybody. I'm out of here."
Got a pension to think about.
Which is a good thing. Yeah, I'm glad.
Well, it's the right thing to do.
It's
the right thing to do, but it certainly isn't going the way of the rest of the countries.
Well, if Letney does the right thing, if he's led around, but
Well, I think there's.
He's led around by the wall. Like I said, I think he's
leash
worried
and
about potential more than anything else.
protect.
Well, yeah.
Well, now we got another case here, which we've talked about before. That's the Safe at Home order that was instituted by the city of Racine, and a couple that owns a healthcare club, or not a healthcare club, a health and fitness center.
Yeah, exercise club. Yeah.
They said, well, you're killing us here. You're destroying our business. We can't comply with these rules and survive as a business. And so they went to circuit court with it.
It was Frederickson and said,
Oh, you're right.
Fred
Yeah,
Frederickson
Judge
declared it
Frederickson said-
unconstitutional.
constitutional.
Yeah.
This is where they
too
ran
vague and too
Right.
unenforceable, basically.
unenforceable. That's when they ran it up to the appeals court.
Right.
Corey Mason's entourage.
His buddies up there, yeah.
ran it up and they got to stay. Well, it came back, and and of course we talked about this earlier with the private schools who went and basically went through the same route, and the appeals court came back and said no, it's unconstitutional, which was originally the Frederickson case in Racine, and we already had brought this up. Now the JT caught on. I think they took some of my notes, and they caught on.
Well, one of the things we talked about earlier is when they have a case like this where there's a dispute, I've always thought that the tendency was to leave things as they are, let things function as they are, and then test the validity of the claim.
Right.
And the claim was that everybody should be shut down.
Right.
But they did just the opposite. And they said, well, no, we're going to allow this shutdown to stand.
Yeah, the way that things are is people are open for business. And
Right.
somebody comes in and says, no, I'm going to shut you down. And so the stay shouldn't have been in that case. It should have let things continue.
Well, it was kind of
And
interesting
decision.
because on that I kind of thought, well, how is the appeals court answering that? It came up there. You guys put a stay on Frederickson's order, and it said basically all they said was subsequently granted the city a motion for a stay pending appeal. So they basically washed right through it, never really gave an explanation of why we gave this appeal. Back when they did it, now these are different judges that looked at this, but back then they said, well, it's like a fire code, we
It's
have
like
to have,
a fire
yeah,
code.
It's
In
just
what way?
Very
That's,
weak,
yeah.
very weak.
Yeah, stretched it all out. Yeah, and well, it's just this one businessman he might go out of business. He might. They didn't say he might go out of business,
Right.
but the point was it was just this one business. Now this is somebody's dream. It's their livelihood. It's what they want to do, and you're just going to shut them down because. Well, somebody might get sick if he.
Well, it's one business that objected. I'm sure there were others that.
Going back to that, and you say, well, when you usually have an appeal goes up to the appeals court, I mean, they don't just automatically say, oh, we're gonna listen to the other side right away. They let it play out, then they take the appeal and they decide how it should be handled. This emergency this order that we're going to put a stay on everything, and the city comes in and shuts all the businesses down, and the private schools are shut down, and of course the RSUD is shut down. I mean, that was a drastic move. Otherwise, to say, like all the other municipalities around here, basically stayed open, be safe, be sensible. I mean, even the business came out and said, we're going to practice, good.
Well, they had been practicing
Yes,
with
they
the
were.
initial restrictions.
But the city of Racine, I mean,
they made
stretch
them more restrictive.
Yeah. And how to stretch that to an appeals court. So there's something going on behind the scenes.
Well, and their excuse was, at least according to the Journal Times, and I'll read right out of here. It says the city was this is the excuse the city spokesman said for their error in shutting all these businesses down when they were the one that was wrong. It was unconstitutional.
Yes.
And they're saying, sorry, the city was dealing with a unique and dynamic circumstance in an unprecedented time of global pandemic and responded based on our understanding of the law. Yeah, this is our understanding of the law, right? While we understand what the court said, the city acted in good faith to try to save the lives and health and protect the health and safety of Racine's residents and visitors. The court's opinion today, and here's the good part, gives us better guidance as to what is permissible under the law should we ever be in this situation again.
Wait a minute, better guidance. They got good guidance from Judge Frederickson.
That's the point I want to say.
Yeah.
You got advice from Judge Frederickson saying it was unconstitutional. And they went through all this rigmarole of going back to the council, getting an ordinance passed, trying to bypass the judge, rushing it up to the Supreme Court. And then remember, the judge came out again and said, listen, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Don't try pulling that trick on me. So they rush it up, hand carry it up to the appeals court on a Friday, and by Friday afternoon they got this decision. So don't tell me, whoever this spokesman is, that you hadn't already had some pretty darn good advice that what you were doing was unconstitutional.
Exactly.
You went ahead and did it anyway.
And I want to go one step further to the appeals court. When they put this stay on, how did you do it? Did you read anything? Because they come back and say, well, we do agree with the circuit court that the safe Racine ordinance is overbroad and vague and is therefore unconstitutional for the reason the court.
But in the meantime, it was allowed to stand for a
Right,
year.
exactly. So you're telling me there wasn't some shenanigans up at the appeals court?
I tell you,
Absolutely.
I want restitution.
And
I want, if there was anybody went out of business, I want Corey Mason to lose his job.
Well, that's a good
All right,
point.
put
That's a
him
good
out of
start.
business,
Yeah.
and I think he should go over to Cuba for 2 years and learn how it is to live under that kind of guidance as he's giving the city. Now, if there are 2 people out of business, I want the next one to be Dottie
no, wait
Bowersocks.
a minute. If you want that, then the city of Racine is going to have to be embargoed by the United States.
Yeah.
I want Dottie Bowersocks, the next one. Lose her job. If there's 3, we're going to go to Scott Letney. And when we run out of businesses, then we'll figure out then what we're going to do with this bunch. But this is crazy to let this go on like this with the simple thing, oh, gee, we're sorry. We did the best we could under the best guidance that we have, and now we understand better. No,
It's called spin. It's called spin.
They had guidance. They had good guidance before today.
I go back to the appeals court. I mean, you knew these guys were going to pull this stunt, and the appeals court went along with them. And now Judge Neubauer is no longer chief judge. So there's some. I'm not saying this is the case that did it, but it probably had something to say.
Well,
There's something else.
A little
There's
bit of
some-
shiftaroo there, up
Yeah.
with all the people that are interested in Corey Mason and
So I know we got to go, but I mean, is there a shift? You see a shift happening at least? I mean,
I do.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, and maybe we'll see more of that. I don't know.
I don't know. I think they got away with doing it.
Well, they got away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we still
They
need
got
to
away
do
with
something because all those bobbleheads on the council. By the way, that they would be down the list.
They keep losing
Get
jobs.
to the bureaucrats if there's enough people. Just the ones that go out of job. I went out of business. I'm not talking about the whole council has to go. But if there were 5 or 6 people that went out of business because of this order, 5 or 6 people in City Hall should lose their job.
Yeah.
You know, you go to
And I don't think that's anything outrageous, Doc. The way he's looking out the side of his eyes.
No. What I'm saying is that you go to a Brewers game, right?
Yeah.
And you get a souvenir bobblehead. Why don't you get one of those when you attend a city council meeting? That's what I want to know.
That's a good one.
All right. At any rate,
You had enough?
yeah, that's good. I had
right.
got my
You got your mojo
feelings expressed.
exercised.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to leave then. Hope you have a good week. Come back and see us next week. Hopefully we'll have some good news. Maybe we'll talk about Foxconn again.
Well, we got to get to Foxconn.
Yeah.
We got to get there.
All right. Thanks for being here.